So now we're recording. So officially welcome to our new episode of Youth is Talking About the Conference of the Future of Europe. I'm very happy that I can welcome so many young people from Italy, Romania, and United States here in our webinar. We're very proud as Institutes of the Regions of Europe to have you all here. And I would say, as it is a very warm day and it's a holiday in Italy or a national day in Italy, we will start and go right into the topic. First question is the European Union developing in the right or wrong direction, or do you think the current development is totally fine? Tudor, what would you say?
I really think about what should I answer from my point of view to this question. And at the moment, they are going somewhere in the middle. Not right, not wrong. They are going somewhere. But they should definitely get a better understanding on how to develop Europe with less bureaucracy and to be able to answer what problems appear more fast, like the pandemic, for example. You cannot stay in the same bureaucracy and have fast answers to the problem that occur. So at the moment, I say it's a neutral position. Evolving, but I cannot say definitely in the good or right way.
Okay, thank you. Serena, what do you think?
I think that after the COVID-19 pandemic, the European Union demonstrated to be quite resilient, and the pandemic caught everyone unprepared. But I think that the response of our union was quite effective, and for this reason, I think that the EU development is going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Jasmina.
I totally agree with what Tudor said, since it's going somewhere in the middle, since European Union has lots of ambitions regarding all the fields in which it operates right now. But at the same time, in different fields, it does not have the right instruments. So it's going towards a positive direction, but at the same time, it experiences lots of failures that demonstrate that we need more engagement in the European Union. So this is.
Okay, thank you. Ellen?
I really agree with what Tudor said about the bureaucracy, that there has been, it's kind of stereotypically European Union that is filled with bureaucracy. But I also think taking the long view of the European Union, it has achieved quite a bit in a short amount of time that no other group of countries has before. So I have a quite positive view of the European Union, but you know, you can't rest on your laurels. There is always things to improve. You can look at the Union and see there are holes and places that need more attention. So positive view, but of course with a grain of salt.
Okay, thank you. Vittorio?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I think that if people like it or not, thanks to European integration progress, the European Union lives in a condition of peace since 80 years. For example, Italy, Romania, just the sad parenthesis of Yugoslavia, we are living in peace since 80 years, and that's a great effort and a great goal, but not all the world can say the same thing. So I think we should be extremely proud of our path, our progress, but I think at the same time we should do more.
Okay, thank you. And Evan, what do you think?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry.
No.
I mean, going off of what everybody said of like the bureaucracy adjusting in COVID, I think definitely it shows a good capability of, say, even a conservative or like a traditional place like Salzburg not really wanting to adjust away from like, we do everything in person and with paper. But now with COVID, it's been able to prove that people can adjust, even like older people verifying their tests that they're negative, these at-home self-tests. I think it shows a good capability that like even in the conservative parts of Europe, people can adjust in new ways or new and innovative digital ways. So I think it'll be overall a really good, it's a good thing for the EU.
Okay, thank you. So overall positive, but for sure much room for improvement. Second question. I see you all well informed about the European Union, and I know that you are. But what is interesting for us, because it's also a big debate always in Austria about the information of European Union. Where do you get your information from? From newspapers, social media, or other websites? And do you think there is enough information about European Union? And which institution you think is most active? So do you have any information connection with one specific institution, with Parliament or with Commission? Or is it more newspaper? Or what do you think about this, Serena?
I usually get information from the internet, and since we are native digital, I think that all of us usually consult the online resources. And I usually use also the social media, and I think that the most developed institution in this field is the Commission, and also the president of the Commission usually communicates towards with social media. So I think it's a very direct way to reach people, especially the young generations.
Okay, Vittorio?
Yeah, I think most of us are quite privileged in this field because a lot of us follow the course on European law or international public law. So maybe we are more informed about European institutions. But at the same time, when I see, for example, participation at the European election, you can see like country like Belgium, where it's compulsory, where 90% of the people participate. But at the same time, countries in the Eastern Europe, like Slovakia, where just 29% of the people go to vote for European election. So in some case, it's true that young generation are more informed, but at the same time, we should do more in order to make people to participate to the European elections, European life.
Okay, thank you. Ellen?
The sources I get most of my news from, on recommendation from a professor, I signed up for the EU Politico newsletter. So every day I get a little rundown of what's happening in Brussels. And then also I listen to the podcast from Politico, is the EU Confidential, which I would recommend. There's a lot of great interviews that go on there. And I agree with Serena that that the Commission is active. I would also say that the Council, the EU Council, is very active, and probably a lot of people hear about them just because it is the heads of states together, and it's kind of a special thing when you have the presidency. And I feel like they're also very active in social media.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jasmina?
I personally get information from websites of official website of EU, but also from Euractiv or EU Observer. And I think that, for example, Euractiv is quite interesting because it is not only a website, but it's also transmitted in channels on TV. So it's very good, in my opinion, since it can arrive to most of the people, not only us that are students that study European Union, but also people who don't even know what happens at the European level every day. And I agree with Serena that maybe the Commission is the institution that is mostly involved in the communication. And I think also the Council of the European Union is quite involved in it. And like Helen, I have subscribed to the Council of the European Union newsletter, so I get all the information about the initiatives of the institution. So I think that is quite interesting.
Thank you. Evan?
Yeah, I primarily get my news from Twitter. I know that it's not that popular in Austria, but at least for me, being an American, I love Twitter. But I wouldn't say like I follow any specific news organization, but rather with Twitter, you can really choose a journalist to get your news from, or then they will, retweet or share their sort of interests and articles that they've read. So maybe I wouldn't say it's as effective as, say, this EU news briefing that Ellen subscribed to, but I think it's a really good decentralized way to get a look at what's going on in the EU. And then sort of as Jasmina and Ellen have said, maybe it's somewhere a mix between the Council and the Commission in being able to effectively communicate. But I think that's also an entirely separate part from me saying that, like, oh, journalists, that's a great way to get their news. Maybe there's a bit of a separation between those two circles, but that's how I break it down for myself.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Twitter is in Austria mostly used by the political and media bubble, so not like in America. And Tudor, what do you think?
From my point of view, it's a lot of information about what's happening at the European level. The only point I am trying to make, taking it from Politico to Twitter, also, I get my information purely online and mostly online. But in the end, the question is, we have a lot of information, more than we can chew. The question is the language available to the general public, to non-academics, that even they have to get the idea of what's happening? We still have that Brussels language, and the information doesn't go to the general public as it should, something that a normal guy can swallow, a guy that doesn't follow regularly the parliament and so on, or doesn't study EU law, for example.
Ellen, yeah?
To a point, I agree, but the sources, so especially the podcast that I mentioned, I think is made to be accessible by the public. But I think there's also another thing in play, that the public is not as interested in the EU as they are in their own national news. So I think once there is a lack of information, but there are some out there, and there's an interest from the public that somehow is lacking. So
I completely agree with that note. That's why I'm blaming that lack of interest, at least in Romania. Maybe there are two barriers. The one of language, because most of the news that will be available to the public are in English, and a lot of people do not speak English, or a certain age group, I mean. And that age group are mostly our voters, unfortunately. And the second one, I forgot.
You can add later if you want.
Okay.
But a question added. We often hear, and we also know it, that the language of Brussels is very complicated, because most of the times the topics are very complex and complicated. But do you think that the people follow national politics more in detail? I mean, the pension reform in Austria is also not very sexy. So is maybe Brussels blamed too often?
From my point of view, it's I think that Brussels should come to the general public, not the public to Brussels, because it's the Brussels interest to be present in the day-to-day life of the people, not either way around. And again, I'm forgetting the point. I forgot the point. Sorry.
Yeah,
and we'll jump in.
To that point, I think in the case if someone is not interested in a pension reform in their own country, they're probably not interested in politics in general, and they are having interests other places. I think for people who are interested in what the government can do for them, they are going to be very interested in a pension reform because it directly affects them. I think this idea, and because of like the bureaucracy that the EU is known for, they think the EU, that's far away, it's dealing with foreign policy, it's dealing in kind of abstract things, it doesn't hit close to home.
Yeah, but again, we have to take in consideration that almost 70% of our legislation comes from EU directives. So it is close to home if we're talking about.
Sorry, 100%. I think it's the perception from the public.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that no one was mentioning the European Parliament or members of the European Parliament as a source of information. And second, just a comment, the 3 biggest newspapers in Austria don't have a correspondent in Brussels. So that's maybe why the EU information looks like it looks. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. And next 2 questions I will combine because it's they will look into the history, but also in the future. And the question what we want to know is, for you, what are the most important achievements of the European Union? And in addition, in which areas or what topics the EU should do much more, or what topic, what areas should be more important in the future to be also new achievements like the ones in the past. Evan.
So for me, I would say one of the biggest achievements, because I've written my thesis in economics, is all of the benefits of creating the single currency. So ultimately, for let's say the debt crisis, ultimately each country suffers less than they would if they had approached the crisis on their own with their own independent currency. So I think maybe moving forward is making it better for like the Czech Republic to understand that they should adopt the euro, then continue to use the Czech krona.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, thank you. Jasmina, what do you think?
I think that maybe one of the most important achievements historically is the fact that European Union promoted a sort of association among countries without creating conflicts. So it was one of the first experiments to promote peace at the international level, and it is not something that cannot be considered banal if you think about all the conflicts that are in the world. So firstly, an integration based on dialogue and peace among countries, that is something that is promoting aside, even though we have problems of coherence inside now. And another achievement, I think that it's the Schengen area. So the fact that now we have lots of privileges in moving from a European country to another without limits, and at the same time also the single market. So the fact that it's promoted also developments not only at the national level of the single countries, but also at the regional level of the specific regions of each country.
And what do you think should be in the future more important? Which topics EU should deal with much more?
I think that in the future, European Union must continue to strengthen the values on which it has been constructed, it has been built. So the promotion of democracy, that is something that is quite actual right now. If we think about the cases of Hungary and Poland that are inside European Union itself, and at the same time, it must promote it more fields that are that in a certain sense arrive to directly to the public of the nation states, so that do not remain at the European level, but go on each field of our everyday life, so employment, education, in order to promote more these values.
Okay, thank you. Serena.
So if I have to think about the most important achievement of the EU and from which I benefited the most, I would say the free movement of people. So I agree with Jasmina, and I would say also the education standardization. So it means that, for example, the high education, at a higher education level, we have quite the same qualification, and they are accepted in all the member states. And some months ago, we read a paper in which our generation is called the European stars. So we identify ourselves as European stars because we have some privileges, such as working or studying in every member state. And I think that is it's actually a privilege for us. So I'm a very proud European citizen also for that. And I think that the area in which the European Union should work more is maybe a controversial topic, because the European Union is promoting the protection of the human rights. But at the same time, there are some minorities that are not enjoying that much this protection of human rights. For example, I studied the minority of the Roma people, which are who are discriminated in some Eastern European countries. And I think that the European Union should do more in order to make the privilege and the enjoyment of basic rights also for these minorities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Vittorio.
I absolutely agree with my colleagues. Another point that I would like to add, that for me is amazing about the European Union project, is the Erasmus project. I would like to remember that 80 years ago, my grandparents and a Frenchman were actually in war against each other. Today, me and a French person, we could go out for a glass of wine and enjoying our life together. For our parents, their space life were the nation, like Italy, Romania, France, Germany. But for us, for our young generation, Europe is our space. I mean, the concept of borders that our parents had and our grandparents had, now for us it's quite disappearing. But at the same time, I would like to say that maybe the European Union should be more stricter on its principle. For example, with about what is happening in Turkey with the Kurdish minority, with China, with the Uyghur minority in Xinjiang. I mean, it's true that we have a really good trade partnership with China and with this country. But when we talk about human rights, I think that the European Union should stand more on its principles instead of the trade and economic benefits.
Okay, thank you. And as Romania was mentioned, Tudor, you're the next.
From my point of view, the first will be Erasmus project. Afterwards, the fact that it established peace. And third, freedom of movement. And which was the other question?
What should be the next big achievements in the future?
To be sincere, from my point of view, European Union should get more involved than it is in the West Balkans, because they are next to come to our club, let's say like that, and to have a more clear international affair policy.
Okay, thank you. And Ellen?
For me, the top three are really clear. So the Schengen, for sure, is, you know, revolutionary. As a pendler, like it makes my life so much easier. Then the monetary union, of course, being able to use the same currency everywhere has made everything a lot safer for people, a lot easier. A lot more prosperous. And then the third for me would be the Paris Climate Agreement. There, of course, like hasn't been as much like progress as we wanted, but it was still a landmark agreement, and kind of being a world leader to show that, no, this is something we all need to take seriously. This is something that like is real and we need to develop in the next decades. And to that point, I think I agree with my colleagues that the human rights really need to be supported. There needs to be a lot more development with the social pillar of the EU. It's out there, and we need to keep working towards those principles. And then with the green initiatives to cut down gas emissions and really work towards a greener future. And just the projects that have already been started, I think, are the next things for the EU. There doesn't need to be new things. There's already so many things in progress that need to be developed and completed.
Okay, thank you. Evan, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think maybe in a way to connect what Tudor was saying and what Alan has said with the climate agreement, I think the fact that the EU and then each member state are signatories to it, that and being in this single market economy, I think that really will help them all set a better, more consistent foreign policy, because then each country and the EU as a whole are all held to these same standards, which then all the economies have to meet and adapt to. So I think through the innovations from that agreement, then will help each member state and the EU overall make a better like foreign policy, looking out towards like the neighborhood or the neighborhood policy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this addition. And as a consequence of what you should more focus on, what would you say are the fields that the European Union, whatever institution it might be, should focus less on? So which topics are maybe not so important or should be not handled on European level? Serena.
Actually, this question is very hard to answer, and I don't know, maybe I would say that as far as the consumers aspect and the labeling field, the European Union has done already a lot, and I think it's an area in which the European Union has already worked, and it is not worth working more in the future.
Okay, thank you. Vittorio?
Yeah, I totally agree with Serena. Sometimes, I mean, European Union is very focused on the kind of quality of products that we eat and that goes on our tables, but maybe sometimes too much focus. For example, the quality of the cheese, the quality of oranges. I think that maybe if the European Union is, and actually it is, like a free trade market, it should maybe focus more on the freedom of trade and economy of citizens and enterprise instead of maybe keeping too much focus on quality and product. Yes, so maybe less serious on this side on the conference in trade. And so that.
Okay, thank you. Jasmina?
I totally agree with my colleagues on this. Also, from my side, I think that the European Union focuses very much on the quality of products. There is too much regulation on that. A few days ago, I was looking at a website that is what EU is doing for you or something like this. And there were lots of fields of regulation regarding the consumers' rights, the consumers' possibility and products and so on. But in my opinion, European Union is not focusing so much on the aspects of rights of the workers, for example. It's true that in some fields, it does not have a proper competence to do something in this state. But at the same time, it must promote more the social aspects, maybe with respect to economy. So maybe I agree with my colleagues, less on the product qualities and the economy on this side, but on the side of workers' rights, for example.
Okay, thank you. Evan?
Yeah, was the question just solely what should the EU focus less upon, or was it what should it focus less upon and shift those that focus onto something new? Is that the question, or simply what the EU is doing too much of?
It was the question, but you can say anything you think EU should not focus so much on or not handle in total, whatever you like.
Okay. I just checking if I had forgotten the question and would say something out of line or something. I think maybe, and I'm definitely speaking about something I'm not an expert in, but let's say data privacy and more so upon like data security, because at least what I've seen from the journalists I follow, like I said on Twitter, it seems that there's been data breaches, but the EU's focused much more upon the data privacy, and they don't know how to respond to keeping that private data secure. So maybe this, for me, is what would be a bigger concern than always championing, oh, we need private data. No one can sell this, but rather once somebody does get this data, how difficult is it? Or what sort of response can an EU institution or a national government do? That's what I would say.
Okay. That's a new point. We never heard it before in this series. Thank you. Ellen?
I have to agree with my colleagues. Whenever I read this question, regulations, overly regulated things was what came to mind. And as an American, when you compare EU with the FDA of what foodstuffs they allow on the market, you have two extremes. And probably the right thing is somewhere in the middle. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Okay, thank you. And Tudor?
To be sincere, Stefan, I never think about this question, and I cannot add anything else besides what was also already said.
Okay, that's fine too. Yeah, Vittorio.
Yeah, I was thinking, and probably another aspect that maybe the European Union should focus less is its relation with its historical ally, that is the United States. I'm sorry, guys, but of course we are part of the NATO. But what I really don't like is that we have to think about our relation with US according to which kind of president it was elected. For example, it was Trump before, then out from the Paris Agreement. Now it's Biden, now inside the Paris Agreement. But then the war, it's involved more in the war. So I think probably it's the time that we are going to our own independent road. We should focus more on our next neighbor, for example, Africa. For example, we should try to rebuild a kind of relation with Russia. So maybe what I would like to concern less is about our too strict and too big relation with US, and maybe be more independent and take our free road by ourselves, because we deserve it and we have the capacities to do so.
Okay, thank you. What do you wish for the future of a united Europe? So it doesn't have to be a political topic in specific, but what do you think? How should Europe develop? What do you want that Europe will look like in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Vittorio.
Yeah, honestly, I think that our brighter destiny is to become a federation altogether, because I think it's the only future that we deserve. Italy, Germany, France, Great Britain alone are countries, but not so relevant right now because we have too much competitor, not only economically speaking, but even culturally, and about, for example, human rights, environment. I think that European Union is the most important pillar that maybe could show a bright future to the rest of the world. And I think that unification and stay together is our only possible road for the future.
Okay, thank you. Ellen?
Yeah, I had kind of the same idea that the thing I wish most for the EU that cohesion policy is followed and deepened, and integration. So, you know, it's kind of finding a solution for democratic backsliding, recommitment to democratic principles. Yeah, and the ever closer union.
Okay, thank you. Jasmina?
I have the same idea, a very positive one that European Union could be a sort of federation in the future, even though so far I am quite pessimistic since we are attending to several national interests that are very different, the one from each other. So it's something that is very difficult to be built in the future. But I hope that working on that, we can achieve the same cohesion or coherence on certain policies, like as Helen said, the democratic backsliding. So facing these problems regarding the major values on which European Union is built. So yeah, my hope is to become finally a federation.
Okay, thank you. Tudor?
I will give you the same answer. United States of Europe. I do not know exactly in which form of federation or any other form, but yeah, to be even closer than we are now.
Okay, Evan, United States of America.
Yeah, I would certainly say the EU could use a few more chairs to open it up for, say, the Balkans, or maybe look instead to the Caucasus region and allow Georgia to enter the EU. I've met plenty of Georgians that are very hopeful to become EU Europeans. I think they would also be classified as Europeans, but yeah, expand the discussion table to the Balkans, maybe into the Caucasus region. I wouldn't see any harm to expanding the EU. You know, unfortunately the UK left the EU, but you know, you could invite a new member from, say, the Balkans or Georgia.
Mm. Thank you. And Serena?
So if someone asks a European citizen to question, what is your main nationality? Everyone would reply with the national identity, with the national citizenship. But for the future, maybe I have an utopistic wish, which is that in the future everyone will identify themselves with the European citizenship. And I think that the European Union started as an economic union and then it became a political union. But I think that for the future, it is important that we will become also a cultural union in which different culture coexist, but we identify ourselves as European citizen, and this is my positive and wish for the future, for a united Europe.
Okay, thank you. One question, because it was also mentioned in the last talks with our other students, and which is part of this information, and are the citizens informed about European Union? How do you think, or what are your experiences within your family or friends and colleagues? Are they informed about European Union, and are they interested in European Union? And are there more positive or negative or neutral towards European Union? Vittorio.
For sure, I talk about my country. There is a generational fight between the young and the older people. Unfortunately, as my colleagues say, older people in Italy are more focused on what the television says, and the television is public and of the national authority. So everything that they know of the European Union is filtered by the national television. So maybe it's not so clear. On the other side, I see a very good optimistic vision of the European Union in general. We have never to forget that actually we are already European citizens. Not all the people knows, but actually it's written on our identity card. We are Italian and European at the same time. And I see in my same generation a really great hope, a really great wish to become closer with our European friends. And yeah, so probably I think that maybe they should leave to younger people more space, because honestly, I think that older people had enough. They made their role, and it's time for us to take our part and take up our voices.
Okay, thank you. Serena.
Actually, I would say that older generations are more Eurosceptic than the new ones. And I agree with Vittorio for what concerns our, because maybe the media are not reporting exactly with a European approach what is happening. And I would say that older generation should inform more about what is happening at the European level. And also, I think that it depends also on the educational level of a person. So if you have the instruments to filter what the news are communicating, it's different that if you don't have these instruments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tudor.
We clearly have to discuss about age groups. In Romania, at least, the older groups are neutral or with a bad perspective, let's put it like that, but mostly neutral. In the rest, the younger population and the active population are definitely pro-Europeans.
Okay. Thank you. Ellen.
And just to add to that, I have seen it. The older generation, I think they enjoy the open borders, but I think the younger generation have really been able to fully enjoy it. Like I think Serena mentioned it earlier, how we read the paper about how the young people are Euro stars, you know, beginning our career, we can move through the EU and we can enjoy the Erasmus programs. And so the younger people have really been able to, reap the benefits. And so that, of course, has a positive influence and will skew much more positive than the older people who maybe have enjoyed traveling like through the EU, maybe have changed jobs and have been able to have that mobility. But I think a lot of people have lived in their country and have worked in their country and do not see so much a difference, which leads to a much more neutral kind of outlook.
Okay, thank you. Evan, how do you see this?
So I would say from my experience not being a dual citizen, I could probably speak the least upon this, but at least I would generally say that I agree with everything my colleagues have said, that, older people, they definitely enjoy the fact that they can move freely throughout the Schengen zone. But I don't think that I know quite enough to speak on this, but I would rather just say that my colleagues, they hit it accurately.
Okay, thank you. And Jasmina?
I would retake the words of my colleague on that. Since, for example, in Italy, it's true that we mostly get information from TV, so we have like a distortion of what comes from Brussels to our national information website or news on the TV. So especially for older people, they don't get actually what European Union does at its level, but get the outcomes on national politics, on what which are the opinions on European Union. So they are the first people that are more skeptical. And at the same time, we have already said that information about European Union is mainly found in websites, so through digital ways. So older people cannot sometimes access to them, even for language, for example. So yeah, I would retake the words of my colleagues. I think that the older generations are more skeptical, while we are maybe more informed, and we are definitely European Union.
Okay, thank you. Do you have something to add or something to comment, or do you want to say anything else on European Union, on the Conference of Future of Europe? If so, then now it's the time for it. And if not, then I say thank you. It was a very interesting debate with some aspects also were mentioned in the previous talks. For sure, it's the same generation. Mobility is a very big issue for sure. Information about European Union, democracy and rule of law, but also some new points like data privacy, data security, minority rights that were mentioned. So I think we see what the young generation wants, but also what the young generation criticize in Europe. So, and that's very important to improve. So I say thank you very much that you took the time and that you shared with us your experiences and your wishes for European Union. And we will upload this video on our YouTube channel of the Institute of the Regions of Europe. And I cordially invite you to follow, like, and share our social media accounts also on Twitter. Yes, we are on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And I'm very happy that you all took the time for us, and I hope we will see again soon. And now I release you in a almost summer evening, and thank you very much and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.